Elon is going to continue to drive the company forward with his great leadership.
The Tesla stock bottom price was just predicted by Gary Black in this interview with Meet Kevin. Let's dive into some of the clips.
Biggest question I get from people, and I talk to a lot of institutions and I talk to retail people on Twitter, but the institutional community, probably the single biggest question is, why is the elasticity of demand for Tesla so low? Why is it? Can you give us a reason? And I've tried to list, 4 or 5 reasons that I think it is. One is just, the early adopters who wanted to be climate friendly, green, whatever you want to call it, make a statement to their neighbors. Hey,
or self-driving, whatever, maybe.
I'm favoring the environment. They've bought. And, now what you got to do is get the people who, they have the money, but they're afraid they're going to run out of charge. And I hear that all the time. So that when you see these surveys about why don't you buy an EV, number one is cost, which is a perception issue because operating costs are lower.
Partially, certainly it is a perception issue, but also it is an upfront payment issue. Most Tesla buyers come from Toyotas. If I want an EV and I'm looking at a Model Y, I'm going with a long range. Anything less than 300 miles, I'm not really comfortable with that. Unless you don't road trip at all, then sure, if you just drive in the city, this will be just fine. But if you road trip and if you need to be someplace on time, I suggest you go with this option unless where you live, it never gets cold at all. Let's say I want to finance my Model Y. Yeah, 72 months for a loan, $2,500 down payment, just to make the comparison easier. The APR here is pretty low and the monthly payment is $800. Unless you are very diligent and you're good at math and you like math like I like math, then you won't really look at this number here, loan after potential savings, because potential does not mean guaranteed. And you will definitely guaranteed for sure 100% will need to pay this amount every single month. On the other hand, if you go with a RAV4, for example, which is a much cheaper vehicle, I mean, the MSRP price of a Tesla is almost twice as much as the RAV4s. And then let's do everything pretty much the same. So we are doing $2,500 down, 72 months for the loan term. I'm not able to change the interest rate, but it is almost double than what Tesla shows. And still, this is under $500. For the Tesla, I'm paying $800, and for the RAV4, I'm paying $497. The Tesla is a superior car in almost every way that you can imagine, but it is more than 50% in cost if you look at just the monthly payment only. Now, of course, there's the tax credit as well, but you don't get that immediately. You have to wait for a whole year to get it. And if you don't have any savings, it doesn't do much. But next year, these credits will be applied at the point of sale, so your payment is actually going to be lower. And if before you were not able to qualify for the loan, next year, you might be able to. When you consider everything that you get for the money that you pay for a Tesla, of course, you are getting a much better deal than you get with comparable gas-powered vehicles.
You don't have to, fill it up with gas or oil, and your maintenance is lower. And
I don't think people go back. Once they're in an EV, I can't imagine.
No, you don't go back.
Yeah.
Once you go EV, you stay EV. But the number 2 reason is because of fear of range anxiety. They're afraid they're going to run out.
When we go on very long drives, that fear is still present actually, but here's what I noticed. Every single year, that fear improves and it gets smaller and smaller and smaller because there are more superchargers everywhere. You have gas stations on every single corner, but that's not the case with superchargers yet. The keyword here is yet.
Cybertruck coming up, this Project Highland, are those just hopes for Tesla?
Fables?
And is that why potentially you've cut some of your position? Or are you getting frustrated with Elon Musk's leadership or maybe lack thereof?
No, I think Elon is brilliant. He's a great CEO. He's a visionary, and he's brought the company to where it is. And there's always been naysayers with Elon. Elon is going to continue to drive the company forward with his great leadership. And I sometimes I come across as a complainer, which I do, but we still own 5.5% of our portfolio is in Tesla. It's our number 2 position.
Here's a complete list of Gary Black's holdings. Google is number 1 and Tesla is just half of that. Chipotle is number 3, then there's Salesforce in the number 5 position. And if you go down, Number 19 is BYD. There are a few more stocks here as well. 34 positions in total. Nvidia is number 31.
We're still comfortable owning it at 5 to 6% weight. And back to your original question, would we take it back up? Maybe if the price goes down a little bit more. I mean, it continues to drift down. Today's having a nice day. But
what's the floor? What's the worst case floor you see?
I think it's 150, and I've told people that I think we're in a 150 to 200 trading range.
Okay. And not back to 100 or 69, like
unless they bring margins down to zero, which again, he has not said they're going to do that. He said technically we could, and I don't know if he was trying to send a signal to the rest of the industry
that it's coming, or
but I don't think he's going to do that.
I do agree with Gary that it is very unlikely that Tesla will go all the way to zero margins, but I do expect some more price cuts. Now, in the US, the situation looks pretty good for the Model Y, which is the most important vehicle. Deliveries in China appear to be quite strong compared to previous quarters. And remember, Q1 was a clear record compared to Q4, and we delivered 12% roughly more vehicles than in Q4 in China. If we annualize that growth rate, that is somewhere between 57 and 60%. If we look at Europe, though, there are some reasons to be excited and some to think that maybe there are more price cuts incoming. Well, in Norway, we are doing quite well so far, but the fourth week did slow down quite a bit compared to week 3, but still it's a whole lot better than all previous quarters. This possibly indicates one of two things. One, there's an insane amount of demand in Norway specifically, and production is ramping quickly, and so we had more deliveries, and possibly perhaps the delivery wave is more even now, so that's good for logistics costs. It could also mean that there's not as much demand in bigger countries such as, for example, Germany, so you have to ship these cars to a smaller country like Norway. And if you look at the inventory levels in Europe, they are quite high. Now, these spikes are very normal because a lot of cars, for example, come from China. So when a big ship comes, of course, you will have a big increase in inventory. To compare this fairly with the previous quarter, it's not really that there to look at the peak here because this was towards the end of a quarter. We need to compare it to the end of the first month of a previous quarter, and then we will have a better understanding, is this a good inventory number or not? So roughly, I think it would be fair to compare to this time, and we are quite a bit higher, not a crazy amount higher, but definitely higher right now than before. And actually, it's a little bit easier to compare the numbers if you look at this chart right here, because it stacks the models together. You would compare this number against this, which would be, if you ignore the Model S and X, that would be over 4,000. Of course, the actual number is going to be much higher than 4,000 because Tesla does not show duplicate configurations in general.
And so back to your question, we hold Tesla at a 5.5% position because of what you just said before. Cybertruck, to me, is the most important catalyst. I have a Cybertruck tri-motor on order. I can't wait to drive it around here in Chicago and valet, as I told people, in front of Nobu, and I'll watch it from outside, and you'll have all these crazy kids taking pictures of the damn thing because it's going to be different. It's going to be spectacular. It's going to be one of these things that when people, it's going to be a walking billboard as people see the Cybertruck in cities all over the country, and hopefully they get it out at the end of the third quarter. They're going to start deliveries. It becomes a draw to go to the Tesla website and go to the Tesla store. You may not buy a Cybertruck, but it's going to be a way to bring people to your website and bring people to your store. That's what happened with Model Y. It's an ad, exactly, and it's different and it's unique.
Oh yeah, it's
so. But I'll drive mine because to me that's like the best car truck in the world. And I've always been an SUV person. I went through my phase probably when I was my early 30s where I had 911s and sports cars, but. As you get older, it's not that you don't like speed anymore, but you like room.
Yeah,
I like having an SUV or a pickup, and I'll love just driving that thing around. My biggest worry is, will it, fit in the garage across the street where I live? I don't know. I hope it does. But I think that's a huge catalyst for the whole franchise, not just we're assuming, there's 1.3 million pre-orders. We're assuming, I think, 300,000 or 400,000 of Cybertrucks delivered next year, 2024, which may be high, but that's our assumption.
400,000 deliveries of a Cybertruck next year. That sounds a bit bullish to me, but if that happens, that will be amazing. And I think something similar applies to the Cybertruck as well. If FSD's current state feels similar to when Tesla was on the cusp of 5,000 Model 3s per week. Lots of pessimism and doubt in the air, but Tesla was inches away from completely transforming the company. The next few months are going to be very telling. Now for a Cybertruck, I would say the next 12 months are going to be very telling. And maybe extend that up to 18 months. I do share the sentiment with Farzad as well, but I would replace a few months with a few years for Tesla's FSD. Kevin asks, Gary, will Tesla perhaps bring the Model 3 eventually down to $25,000?
I wouldn't be bringing Model 3 down to 25 grand. I would really try to step up bringing out, we always used to call it the Model 2. We've been talking about this for a couple of years because you expand the TAM. Yeah. You know, you increase the pie, people who can afford a Tesla. So at $25,000, you're expanding the pie by at least 40 or 50% from where you are today. And I wouldn't wait for Mexico. Mexico, they're saying, you know, it won't be ready and cranking out these $25,000 vehicles till the end of next year. Yeah. I would build something right now in China, and you know, because that's where it's the most competitive for EVs. Right. EV share in China is up to 22%.
Get a Model 2 over there, in other words.
Yeah, and get it out so you can compete with BYD, which is super aggressive at bringing out, you know, these $20,000 to $25,000 cars. Yeah. And I'm not sure what the reason is that they can't do that. I mean, China, they got that whole plant up and running in about 9 months. Yeah. Why can't you get a, you know, we'll call it an M2 factory, a dedicated M2 factory up in China, you know, in 9 to 12 months. And so at least you can compete and get an affordable car out to the masses in China, which is the most competitive market in the world.
We wanted to go to Taipei, actually, but with this happening regularly, yeah, I don't think it's a great idea right now. If Tesla stock was just 5.5% of my stock portfolio, like it is in Gary's case, or maybe even 10%, or maybe even 20%, I would be all over Tesla opening another huge factory in China and maybe focusing mostly its production within China even. And if things go south, it's only 5% of my portfolio, 10% of my portfolio, doesn't matter. And I'm not sure if Gary saw this. Tesla, according to the rumors, is planning to build 1 million small Model Ys, basically the next generation vehicle, in Shanghai. So it's not that Tesla is not trying to increase its production in China. It is. I'm not against expanding a lot in China. I'm just saying it would make me feel uneasy if Tesla focused mostly just on China. That's a Patreon exclusive video. This is so crazy, it's actually bullish for me. I will be uploading another exclusive Patreon video later today in the next maybe 5 or so hours. And this is a video that explains why Tesla board members are now buying more Tesla stock. My name is Matt Post. Just like and subscribe if you haven't yet, and I will see you in the next video. Thank you so much for watching.